Well, morning, everyone. We're live on YouTube. I mean, there isn't anyone there yet, but people will appear hopefully in the next few minutes. We're starting in 9 minutes. Until then, I'm just going to scroll through the texts that we've been submitted and try and stop my microphone bouncing up and down. So you can see here, we've got 7 texts submitted today. Topic is writing to analyze. We've got a text from Amanda. Got a text from Ceyda. Text from Elisa. From Toyosi. From Sylvia. And Sandy. And Alisa. And finally from Pinhua. Okay, that's the last one. So those are the 7 texts we will be discussing. I'll be giving feedback on today. I haven't read them yet, so I'm going to be actually reading them live, and you can read them along with me. So I've left the font pretty large, so I hope that you can actually see what I'm talking about. We'll see if anybody comes to watch this live. If not, I'm just going to post it for my students, which is also fine. But I won't start for another 8 minutes because that's when the official start time is. In that time, what I will do is briefly talk about the task my students have been working on, so that maybe you haven't seen the task and you're just watching this because you're not one of my students, you can just understand a little better what we are talking about. So let me just open this up and then show it on the screen here. Okay, here we go. So this is the task that my students were working on. I'll just make it full screen so you can see the whole thing. What you have is a bunch of data, qualitative and quantitative. You have an email which you've received, which you have to reply to. You've got some comments from your staff. You've got some sales figures, so rental figures per store. And you've got a survey called How Do You Watch Films? And that shows us for the 4 quarters of the previous year, how different people watched films. Average number per quarter by source. Okay, and as hopefully you've seen already, you work for VideoPlanet, very retro here. You're doing DVD movie and computer game rental. Now, this is something that I remember when I was a kid. We used to have this, but we don't have it anymore. The times changed. Something called broadband internet happened, and a company called Apple, with its iTunes service, realized, what we can really do is we can stream movies. So people don't even have to leave their couch. They don't have to go to the DVD rental store. They can just click and they'll get it. Then another company called Netflix realized, wow, we could offer that on a subscription basis. People could pay 12 euros a month and get to watch as much as they like. And this was the future. But back in 2008, when this simulation is set, that was just on the horizon, that whole idea. So what we have here is a situation where there's an industry and it's about to enter what we might call a paradigm shift. Like there's going to be a massive change, and those companies which see the change coming, they are going to be most successful in creating a new strategy that will work. And those companies rely on insightful employees to spot this trend. And this simulation is that moment. You get an email from the boss, and the boss has access to data, has an idea of what's going on. Also, I think we can see here the board. If we look at the email from the boss, so if we look at this part here, it says the board, so the management board, have finally realized we need to act urgently. So you have the boss, who is called Alex Martin, CEO. Your name is Sally Field, and Alex is talking about the people above him, the board of management. And there's been a realization. So you're at the moment where the boss and the boss's boss, they've all sort of realized, damn, something needs to happen, but we're not sure what, but we know something needs to happen. And that's the situation we're in. So your job is to analyze some data and write. You get the chance now to write the email that can influence your boss's thinking on this. He will then go and influence the board's thinking on this, and you could set the whole company agenda and make them aware that this is not a question of tweaking the strategy. It's not a question of adding in one new product or maybe a slight price reduction or a new marketing strategy. Those things are all nice, but they are not going to address the key problem here, which is like the whole of our industry is changing. So there's kind of big stakes. There's big stakes here. It's a tricky email to write. You have to firmly but gently indicate that everything is going to change. That's the stakes at play here. So as we approach 11 o'clock, still have 3 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read each of the students' texts. I'm going to point out the strengths of the texts. I'm going to try and talk in terms of what I call PCAF, PCAF, purpose, content, audience, form. This is a way of analyzing communication which emphasizes that the effectiveness of an email or the effectiveness of a moment of speech should be judged on how effectively it completes its designated purpose for the designated listener or the reader in this case. So we're not talking about generally in emails, you should write like this, or you should include these sentences or these words. We're talking about in this email, for this specific reader, what do we need to do? So I'll be taking the purpose, which is to analyze, but bubbling under there, there's also elements of explaining the situation, also elements of maybe persuading the boss of the significance of the situation. So it's predominantly writing to analyze, but there are other purposes within that as well. So that's the purpose. The purpose is to achieve analysis. The reader is the boss of the company, who is Alex. And we know from the email that Alex sent, let's go full screen here. We know that there is a willingness on the part of the board to do something. And Alex is also recognizing that there's a bit of a problem here. So your situation is your reader is not completely unaware of the situation, but they are maybe only partially aware. And your reader is in a tricky situation because he is above you in the hierarchy, but below the board in the hierarchy. So you need to be writing in a tone which sort of says you care about the company, you understand the problem, and you're going to give recommendations, but you also understand his situation. He can't just do stuff. He has to also convince people himself, right? He has his own job there. And also, we've got to be careful about making our tone too like it's completely obvious what needs to happen. That's not good either, because you've been working at this company. And if the tone of your email says, well, it's quite obvious, we have to set up a online streaming service. The question in the boss's head will be, well, why didn't you say something earlier? If this was so obvious to you, why did you let this get so far that the board is concerned, right? So you have to be a little bit careful with your tone here if you want to achieve that purpose for this specific reader. So that's like the purpose and the reader, the audience. So PCAF, purpose and audience are done. What are the C and the F? That was content and form. Now, the content and the form are the two areas of PCAF where you have the most control. You can't really control the purpose. Life presents you with a purpose here. And you can't really control the audience. You can influence the audience, but you cannot determine how Alex understands your email. What you can determine is what you write, content, and how you write it, form. So in terms of content, you can't write everything. You can't summarize every single piece of this data. That will be a very, very long email. And we are not trying to fully explain the situation. We're trying to analyze the situation. That means we're being selective and we're picking out those pieces of data which reveal deeper connections, deeper trends. And we are converting data into information, into understanding and insight. So our content is going to have to be pretty selective. Otherwise, this email is going to get too long. So I'm looking for people to go in here and select the key trends. I'll just show you a couple. One key trend is this one here, for iTunes. If you look, we have an increase here of 2 films per quarter to 6.1. That's more than tripled. It doesn't look much when you look at that table, but if you look at the other trends, they're all going up or down much more slowly. So 6 to 6.4. Down here, we got a decrease 2.3 to 1.8. This is the only trend where we see massive transformation. That's going to be important. We've got a few important points from our staff as well. If it weren't so expensive, we could work towards establishing our own download rental service. Download rental. You look at paid download for iTunes, download rental, that seems to be the way forward, but it's too expensive apparently. If we can find a way of mitigating that expense, then maybe it can work. There's also some red herrings in here. Maybe you've heard the term red herring when you've been watching movies or reading film reviews. A red herring is when you get like a clue, but it turns out to be the wrong clue. So if you're watching a whodunit, you might immediately suspect one character, but then it turns out not to be him at all. And that's called a red herring. I'm not sure why we call it a red herring. I maybe have to look that up. If we look in the task here, I've included a bit of a red herring, which is this comment here. Obviously, the main problem is internet piracy. Now, if we look at the data, internet piracy is BitTorrent. But BitTorrent is not really increasing at the same rate as the paid downloads from iTunes. And paid downloads is not internet piracy. It's completely legal. So this comment from this member of staff, obviously the main problem is internet piracy. That's not really correct. That's our problem, but that's not the main problem. Now, I put it at the start of these comments because I want to see which of my students actually read through the comments and actually evaluated them, and which maybe just grabbed the first comment and just included it in their email. Because the truth is not in that first comment. The truth, if anything, is in this, and maybe this one down here. We certainly can't do it alone. Instant paid downloads from iTunes. How are we supposed to do that? We certainly can't do it alone. That's a very kind of a strong hint there. And here we have the possible key to the puzzle. We might not like it, but a merger with Blockbuster might be the only way to save us. So Blockbuster is a competing company. If we read the comments, we see that Blockbuster does video, not games. And Blockbuster tried to set up a download service, but it failed. So Blockbuster have some experience with this, but they couldn't make it succeed. So it's 3 minutes past 11. I'm going to start analyzing the text in a sec. So the answer here is probably contemplate a merger with Blockbuster. Blockbuster doesn't do games, so you can leverage the fact that you do games and say, well, look, we can bring you games. Blockbuster has experience of downloads. It didn't work, but they have experience. And through synergies, so doing the same thing, 2 different companies, you can maybe save the costs that prevented Blockbuster from being successful, and so far have prevented VideoPlanet from doing their own download service. So that is kind of the answer I'm looking for, roughly speaking. Now, I'm not an experienced streamer. I can see, I think, okay, so as far as I'm aware, I'm still alone here, which is fine. If anyone's watching and they realize the sound is bad or they can't hear me, then just put a comment in the chat and I will try and rectify that. But I'm going to switch to my my texts from my students. So let's share that in so you guys can see it as well. And we begin with Amanda's text. Okay, first things first. Amanda correctly begins the text with a capital letter. We like this. In English, although you have a comma here, you always begin with a capital letter. I don't know why. It's just what we do. Okay. I think it's wise to gather the core issues first. I wouldn't say most substantial predicaments. I'd say they're issues, or I'd maybe say problems. A predicament is a very specific problem. A predicament is when you are in a quandary or a tight spot, like you're like everything you do might make your situation worse. And these could be predicaments, but I think more generally issues or problems is the way forward. Let me just set the language here to English so that we don't have everything being underlined. I think that Amanda's approach of just going straight in there is pretty good, pretty clear. I wonder whether there might be time to acknowledge the fact that the board is willing to act, to show that you agree that this is the right moment to do something. That is something where you could build a little bit of trust maybe with the reader, and show that you're aware of their situation. There's always an opportunity to do that at the start of an email, to indicate that you've read their email carefully and that you're aware of their situation. It's not maybe necessary here though. So we got this list. When I see a numbered list, 1, 2, 3, 4, first of all, I think good. We have a nice, logical, clear sequence, and we're using formatting to make this instantly clear to the reader. So that I like. What I'm not sure about is the order here, because game rental at number 1 suggests to me that that is the most substantial issue or problem, and that instant pay downloads is only the 3rd most substantial, but it's not entirely clear. Is this in order of importance, or is it just in order? I would suggest that if it's not in order of importance, then rather than saying 1, 2, 3, 4, let's take bullet points here instead, because then we don't have this issue where we're creating an assumption that 3D is, game rentals is the most important issue. So that might be worth changing, unless that's what Amanda believes. Let's see. So I'm reading now. So this is, sometimes the formatting might have got a bit messed up in the copying and pasting. Okay. So now we've got some nice structural information. Amanda set up the situation and explained what she's done so that the reader knows what's going on. And then we get some more formatting. We have the same enumeration, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like 1, 2, 3, 4 here. That consistency is great. We've got some bold, that makes it clear. And these seem to be really well-structured paragraphs. I'm just going to read this one. You can read along with me if you like. Okay, so this is a very well structured paragraph, 3 sentences, complex sentences, use of the however connective to indicate that the expectations set up in the first and second sentences have been subverted in the 3rd sentence. And we have a consequence of that using therefore not a reliable source of income. You're taking a piece of information and revealing its significance, which is, as far as I'm aware, analysis. So I'm loving this. Let's look at the next couple of paragraphs. Okay. This is all true, what happens in this second paragraph. If we look at the survey, it does indeed indicate that people are watching pirated movies, and that our sales, our rental is going down. We know that. The thing is that what is missing here from Amanda's text is that this trend is important, but not as important as another trend, which is coming here. And I think that the question is, are you creating, is there a danger of creating a misunderstanding in the mind of the reader by talking about this problem before mentioning this much bigger problem, having not mentioned the much bigger problem first? I think that a reader who reads through carefully, as all readers should, would get it. But what if your reader's on the way to a meeting, or he's doing this or doing that because he's the boss of the company? There's an argument to say you got to make it impossible to misunderstand, because we take responsibility for people, for not for what we think people should understand, but what they actually understand by our writing. Maybe something to think about. Okay, Pinhua, I hope we have somebody watching. This is massive. Pinhua, the answer to your question, you said you're not in the chat. Is that an answer to me being you can hear me or you can't hear me? Oh, that's right. No, it's an answer to the point I'm alone. I'm not alone. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm using streaming software called StreamYard, which is what you can say. So I don't have the YouTube open, but I'll try opening YouTube and turning the sound off just so I can see what's going on there. The problem is that the YouTube is always delayed from what I'm doing. But if I turn the sound off, okay, there we go. Okay, so now I can see the comments. Oh, that works. That works. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Well, I think we'll continue. I can now see on YouTube, you can see the text seems to be working okay. I'll jump back into StreamYard and I'll continue my feedback of Amanda's writing. Now, this is the big paragraph, right? This is the one where one of our biggest problems. So it is clear, if read properly, this email will do the job. Let's read this paragraph. Oh, I am loving Latin in texts. Big. Okay, this is an excellent paragraph. So Amanda acknowledges that, yes, Blockbuster tried to make their own download service. It didn't work. And she says, having said that, which is a different way of saying however, she said however before. So she's varying her vocab to make the email more pleasant to read. Always a good idea. Having said that, we believe this is the future of film rental. Okay, and important, we take that idea into consideration. This is very neutral, clear language level to take something into consideration. It's absolutely appropriate when the priority is clarity, which it is when you're writing to analyze. And this then is a key trend here. Just last year, iTunes managed to increase the amount by 3 times. We might want to simply say manage to triple the amount of their users. And that will allow us to shorten our text a little bit. So that might be one thing we could try there. Last but not least, more connective language of 3D cinema. Yeah, okay, so I think that the content is bang on. The form, how it's being expressed, I wonder whether it would have been an idea to prioritize this, have this at number 1, then maybe talk about this, then game rentals, then last but not least, well, it is kind of least, right? 3D cinema is probably the least significant trend. So you might say last and very much least. But I think that's the only thing I would change about this. Within each paragraph, this is simply superb English. Very impressive. Okay, so we have a clear 2-way split in the email. We have the analysis followed by the strategies, the suggestions. And if we think about the task, that is exactly what Alex wanted. So we have come up with a few strategies. Let's take a look at this paragraph here. Okay. When we are writing in English, we do not need commas before that. In German, which is what most of my students speak, you always need a comma before the word das. And it's very difficult for German speakers to get out of that habit, but we don't need this comma here because it is evident that this requires no comma. So this is the okay, this is what I would change about this. It's absolutely correct to begin with this idea, but I wouldn't say one of our ideas. This is going to be the kind of the main thrust of the strategy. So maybe something like our strategy could or should or might center on establishing our own download service. That might be a way of indicating that we need to build everything on this. This is not just, an idea. This is like the idea. The reason I have the ing form here is because we have a preposition. Whenever you have a preposition, in, at, on, those kind of short words, you always need an ing form in the verb afterwards, making it the present participle. Let's look at the, okay, I think this is all well explained. Let's look at this second paragraph. Right, so this is a very creative idea to team up with Blu-ray. Perhaps we can reach out with Blu-ray, come up with a deal. I think it's good that this is sort of strategy number 2. This can't be like the bedrock of the whole new strategy, but it works well as a backup strategy to number 1, especially if we could use this center on to establish this is the main strategy. Little outro. Okay, this is a polite, clear outro. Overall, I think that Amanda has written what I would describe as a very solid text here. Things I would change are the ordering, the sequencing, as I've talked about before. The tone I wouldn't change at all. I think it's absolutely correct. I would consider adding a slightly more personable, maybe emotional intro, not some crazy emotional stuff, but just an acknowledgement that you agree the problem is serious and that you're keen to try and solve it, something like that. But otherwise, I think that this has a good balance of breadth and depth. There's some very nice analysis here, and the strategies make sense, especially if we focus on how we express their relative importance. Thanks very much for uploading, Amanda. Great job. Let's then continue with Ceyda's text. I will have a quick look in to see if we have any comments or anything happening on YouTube. 3 people watching. This is massive. This is 3 more people than I had on my last live stream. Great stuff. If you want to put any comments in the chat or questions or responses to what I'm saying, then please feel free to do that. I'll take a little look as I move through the texts. So straight away, let's look at Ceyda's text. We have clear paragraphing. We have a capital letter at the start. We have some use of formatting, and we have some extensive use of underlining here. Generally speaking, I have a calm feeling inside me when I look at this text, because as a reader, I feel I know where the information is going to be. I can look at it and I instantly get a sense of it. I think it's pretty important when you have a high stakes email and your reader is going to be in a stressful situation that you take steps to acknowledge the fact that they may not be able to sit down and read through a very dense email. You've got to make it accessible to them. That's your job when you're writing to analyze for this kind of reader. Let's take a look at Ceyda's introduction. All right. Very nicely done. First things first, we have this acknowledgement I was talking about before. I think it is worth doing. Some people would say, no, you shouldn't do that. It's a waste of time. You have to get straight to business. Time is money. I disagree respectfully. I think that the value you get by acknowledging the reader's perspective, by saying, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, it gets your email off on the right foot, and it creates a level of credibility which will help support the rest of your argumentation. Diligent, nice vocab, diligent discussion. So we have alliteration here, D. Why not use some literary devices in an email? Let's not go overboard, but it's good. And as well as using some nice vocab, establishing trust with the reader, Ceyda has also set up a roadmap for the email. I now know exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be 2 services. I'm going to get analysis, and then I'm going to get strategy suggestions. So it's like, you go into a restaurant, you see the menu, and you think, yes, this looks tasty. I know what I'm going to get. Let's look at the first analysis, which is game rentals. Interesting that just like Amanda, Ceyda is starting with game rentals. Once again, I'm a little concerned because they're not the key issue. But she says there in bold, no need for immediate action, which I think is a good way of dealing with it. Let's look at this paragraph. Okay, so this is some detailed, some quite sophisticated stuff. First of all, we have some nice vocab here: to reach a plateau, describing graphs. And there's a brief explanation there to provide context so we understand why that's happening. Then there's the indication that basically this is going fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, and that's where we have the however. And Ceyda's chosen to underline this whole section. And I know why. So Ceyda is linking this with the idea of collaboration with our rivals. She's not suggesting collaboration, but she's planting the seed of this idea, knowing that she's going to come back to it later, I suspect. This is smart. I like it. I'm not sure how I feel about this underlining, though. especially this part where we have it like underlining a whole paragraph. I think if we do too much underlining, it might feel a little bit too kind of like you're yelling at us, maybe. But it certainly does a good job at revealing the key point. So I think that starting with game rentals makes sense because you're flagging up why we need to think about it. Despite the fact it's not a major issue, it has an impact on what will be a major issue, namely the necessity to collaborate. Let's continue. Let's check out this paragraph. Straight away requires immediate action. I mean, it's very clear. Interesting. Video on demand. Okay. Again, this is detailed analysis. Ceyda's doing a really good job here about not focusing too much on saying what the data is, but more saying what does the data mean? What does it reveal to us? I wouldn't change much in this. We have tripled. Great. As opposed to popular belief. I'm not sure if it's popular belief. I would say, despite what some in our company might believe. Because we are referring here to the comment of the red herring comment, right? I don't think this is necessarily a popular belief. We need to make clear that, you know, you're not saying it explicitly, but you're strongly implying to the reader some people in the company will be telling you something different. But I'm saying right now that's wrong. It's good because you're not directly criticizing them. You're sort of leaving it up to him. He can choose to believe them rather than you, but you are making your position clear. You are also justifying your position with the data. You can leave it to them to justify their erroneous position. Yeah. So the conclusion also underlined, we strongly recommend our business strategy must be revised according to. So I think I would word this slightly differently. I'd be tempted to use the phrasing I put on my example email, must include some kind of VOD service, something like that, or must be revised to include. I would argue that you're not revising it, you're actually completely changing it, overhauling. Must be overhauled, or must be fundamentally rethought, something like this, okay? Because we are talking here not about a slight change of tactics, but a fundamental change of strategy. So I think that as soon as you're underlining a whole paragraph, the underlining becomes kind of meaningless, right? Because the whole thing is underlined. So you're sort of just raising the importance of everything. I would say underline, but underline only very short phrases, specific words. So let's look at this final paragraph. So Netflix is not quite existing yet. Do you know Netflix began as a mail service? You sort of clicked on their website and you said, I want these films, and they mailed you the DVDs and you watched them, then you put them back in the envelope and you mailed them back. I remember this. Wow. But I think Netflix was founded in 2010. I don't think it was founded in 2008, but it was definitely on the way, on the horizon. I think that this is an excellent conclusion. The only thing I would maybe include is an acknowledgement of the radical nature of the collaboration plan. It is a big deal to decide to collaborate with your major competitor. Imagine if Apple decided to just, have a merger with Microsoft. So maybe some acknowledgement of that to say, it might sound crazy, but I think these measures are justified, how might you say it? As unbelievable as it may sound, I would actually advocate a merger with Blockbuster, something like that. But overall, this is, considering how relatively how brief this was, we're talking 387 words. Okay, just over 400 words. Ceyda has covered a lot of ground there and achieved a real analytical depth. Tone is also on point. Vocab's on point. A lot to like. A lot to like about this. All right. So we continue the stream over on YouTube. Still a few people watching. That's very nice. 4 people watching now. Biggest stream ever, quite literally. Again, if there's technical problems or you can't understand what I'm saying, then feel free to. Oh, Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions has just arrived. Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions is a company very dear to my heart because it's run by my brother Chris. All right, Chris. Thanks for joining the live stream. Okay, let's go on then to the next text, which is from Elisa. Again, we're going to do the first thing, have a quick look at it and sort of first impressions. We have a capital letter at the start. Life is good. We have paragraphs. Bang, bang, bang. And we have 2 headings, merging with Blockbuster, expanding our services into other branches. Now, I'm going to straight up change branches to sectors. That's a little bit of linguistic interference here. In German, it's called Branche, and it means like a sector or a certain industry. Branches in English means Äste, what you have on trees, or Filial, like your local bank branch. So got to be careful of German interfering with our English, linguistic interference. But that is not going to ruin this email by any stretch. So let's take a look at the introduction. Okay, first things first. We don't just have an acknowledgement of the situation. We have a really strong acknowledgement of the urgency using the word finally. The question is, has Elisa taken it too far by saying finally realized? I don't think so. I mean, if you worked in this field and it was 2008 and you hadn't realized something needed to happen, then it was about time. So I think that really you are justifying, and you're also kind of enhancing the sense of urgency that was already present in incipient form in the email from your boss. So you're sort of taking an element. You're taking an element of that email and you're trying to boost it. If your boss in his email had a tone of, I really don't understand what everyone's panicking about, then you would have to adopt a different tone here. But because he's already thinking along those lines, you can grab that idea and you can boost it. And it won't feel like you're being too over the top. I think it's the right level. Yeah. So yeah, it's true. 2 to 6.1 is an increase of 305%. That is certainly a way of underlining that kind of exponential growth. We know all about exponential growth because we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. So everyone has seen the difference between a graph that does that and a graph that does that, right? And you see here, BitTorrent has increased by 7% and iTunes has increased by 305% respectively, whereas DVD rentals have decreased by 20%. I think that Elisa has bang on the money by quoting these percentages, but I think more attention could be drawn to the disparity between 7% BitTorrent increase and 300% iTunes increase, especially as we know voices in the company seem to be thinking that BitTorrent is the main threat, internet piracy, but it's not. So I think that hopefully the reader will understand this. But sometimes readers need things spelling out a little bit more. And it's such an important point. It might be worth including a sentence here saying, just realize that voices in the company believe that BitTorrent is a threat, but if we look at the figures, 7% versus 300%, I think it's clear where the real threat is. Something like that, just to really ram that home. Because you need to justify this seemingly insane strategy. And that might be a way to do that. But this is a very smart use of the data, it must be said. So let's take a look at the first paragraph, number 1. I think it's interesting that Elisa has gone for merging with Blockbuster up front. It does make sense, in my opinion. Let's read the paragraph. All right. This paragraph is full of things to like. I'll just, first of all, because I'm an English teacher, I'll take out the one problem. We do not need a comma here. And although the board might not be, I also personally love sentences that begin with and. I think it makes it sound exciting. Some people will tell you should never begin a sentence with and, but I think I'm here for this. I like it. First things first, Elisa is acknowledging the radical nature of the suggestion. They might not be entirely pleased by the suggestion. She is aligning herself with the reader by saying, we strongly advise them to consider this option. We means people in the company, but it could also mean me and you, the reader. We should do this. So Elisa is very subtly creating a team feeling. It's her and what's the guy's name? Her and the reader against the board. And that is the situation, because he's going to have to do the explanation to the board. So I think this is the kind of sort of subtle tone which makes an email feel like it makes you feel understood as a reader and supported. Partnering up with biggest competitor. So competition and is the thing. Competitor is the people in it with you. Konkurrenz, also Konkurrent, oder Wettbewerber. I say it in German because my students are German. Is it might give us our best fighting chance. This is just some really nice phrasing. It is a fight. They do only have a fighting chance. If you have a fighting chance, it's a very interesting expression. It means that all is not lost. You have, but it is by no means in the bag. Like Nottingham Forest have a fighting chance of promotion to the Premier League. Everyone knows that it's not going to happen, but it could theoretically happen. Maybe Chris in the chat, tell me, do Forest have a fighting chance of ever returning to the Premiership? That's just a joke about our football team who are rubbish. Students, if you want to find out, then Google Nottingham Forest FC. Okay. Now, the second suggestion from Elisa is expanding our service into other sectors. Let's check this one out. Okay. Once again, there's this great sort of rich metaphorical language here to keep our business afloat. Of course, they're not in the shipping business. There's no real floating happening, but it's a metaphor which makes the language feel rich and natural, which is fantastic. I do have some issues, but they are not with the form. They are only with the content of this paragraph. Namely, VideoPlanet already has game rentals. So they can't branch out into the gaming market. They're still going to be in there. Work on video games rentals. Yeah, they do it. Another possibility would be establishing our own download rental service. Yes, absolutely. But the whole point of that, the whole point of the merger was to facilitate that creation of a download rental service. So you don't want to separate those two things out. The point is that VideoPlanet Blockbuster has the experience. VideoPlanet can bring with it the solid business in games, which is why there could be a synergistic relationship between the two. Each one has something to bring to the table. So I love the language here, multi-sectoral enlargement, all very good. But the content, there's a slight misunderstanding there. Overall, with this email from Elisa, again, it's not a long email. We're talking under 300 words, so very readable. And you could open it on your phone, a couple of scrolls, and you read the whole thing. Nevertheless, she covers a lot of ground. But if I were being strict about it, with my English teacher hat on, I'd say we have to be a little bit clearer with our content, and we cannot create. If there's a fundamental misunderstanding expressed so well, then you offer, then you are in danger of like being very persuasive, but persuading your boss of the wrong thing, which is a dangerous combination. Okay, if you write it in really good language, but the content isn't quite correct, then that's a bit of a problem. But we have to say that the rich use of metaphorical language, the use of idiomatic language here is really, really great. So thank you very much for uploading that, Elisa. We're going to go to Toyosi's text next. I'm going to have a quick look in the chat. Chris says that Forest are not going up this season, but next year we have a fighting chance. There we go. Let's take a look at Toyosi's text. Now, this is instantly more expansive. We've got, I think, over 500 words. Okay, we've got 457, so 450 words here. So it's a little bit longer. Let's see if Toyosi has put those words to good use. I suspect he has. Introduction. Okay, so we have straight away, capital letter, we like this. Another use of finally. Our falling turnover requires drastic saving. It requires drastic action. You can save somebody's life, but you can't save. You can take action in order to reverse falling turnover, but saving doesn't quite collocate. Deliberations remains a good word for discussions. Right then, and we've got the relation to the data there. Revamp is a nice choice of verb for this. Okay, we go straight in with establishment of our own rental service. You always need to say our own in English. In German, you can just say eigene oder ein eigener, an own, but we also have to say our own in English. Now, the strategy that Toyosi has adopted is to go for the pros of each idea and then the cons. I think this is probably a good idea, but let me first of all read the paragraphs. So let's read the pros for establishing the download rental service. Okay, Toyosi makes some good points here. An average of at least 6 films was watched regardless of the quarter. It's a valid point, but surely the important trend here is not that it's 6 films, it's that it has increased from 2 films to 6 films in 1 year in the case of iTunes, and that increase has not been reflected in the illegal option of torrenting films. So as we saw before, 305%. I think that if you just talk about 6 films per quarter, you risk underselling the benefits of this strategy, because it's not about securing six sales per quarter per person. It's about being part of that, huge rise, which we are going to see if you look at the way it's increasing in iTunes. So I think this is an example of getting the right data, but focusing on not quite the right element of that data and underselling your own idea a little bit. Compare it to the text from Elisa, who pointed out this 305% thing. So let's just take a look at the cons. This is very well written, by the way. Nice. Look at this. Okay, so including cons is fundamentally a good idea when you're writing to analyze. You're not writing to persuade here. You're not trying to just purely convince somebody. Sometimes if you're writing to persuade, you're doing that because somebody understands the database reasons for a decision, but they don't fully understand it emotionally or agree with it emotionally in here. In that circumstance, I would say maybe emphasizing all the drawbacks is not a good idea. Here you're writing to analyze, and the problem is not that your reader does not believe in your ideas, it's that they're not aware of the ideas. That means that to make the ideas persuasive, you need to show that you have looked at both sides of the argument. Long story short, including cons actually makes your arguments more convincing in an analytical context because it shows that you've looked at both sides. The important thing is to make sure the cons don't actually outweigh the pros, but then they wouldn't, because otherwise you wouldn't be advocating that course of action. So I think that the pros and cons thing is actually a good structure here. I think that the points that Toyosi makes here are good. I have no linguistic changes. This is wonderful. Alternative recommendation, interesting. So we have possible strategies, plural, and we kind of get some strategy here. Then we have alternative recommendation, cinema collaboration. I think we should be a bit more consistent. If we can say possible strategy, we should say alternative strategy or alternative strategy recommendation, just to make sure everything is clear. Cinema collaborations. Let's look at the pros and cons of this one. Okay, I think that we have a similar issue here is in the other paragraph. It's true that the number of films watched has increased quarterly, but that doesn't tell the whole story. We need to know the proportion, the relative increase of the different channels of consumption. That is where the key insights are. And if we want to boost the quality of the content of our analysis, you always have to ask, have I really got to the root of this problem, or I'm sort of skirting around it and being a little bit too vague? So I think that this is an example of, yeah, the trend is important, but it is something within that trend we have to focus on. Okay, these are, again, sensible cons for the cinema collaboration idea. They make it seem more convincing. It's a well-written paragraph. Now we've got anti-piracy laws. So this relates back to download, but illegal download this time. So I think that we have to maybe create a clearer link between, wait for my text to appear, between this section here and this section down here. Let's see what Toyosi says here. Okay, so it's true that the government is cracking down on piracy, which is not a bad thing. It's nice, but as we know, piracy is not really the key problem here. So I think that although this is a good point, I think it should probably be located within this section, because this is where it's relevant. But it's only relevant if we focus on the right trend, which is the relative increase of paid and pirated downloads. Okay, so I think overall, Toyosi, with this text, the ideas are good, and the language is very good. It's super clearly expressed. The structure is also absolutely in place. What we need to do, though, is make sure from the outset that we're focusing on the most important trends. If you don't do that, then it has a knock-on effect. It means that your email structure becomes maybe a little bit unclear, and it means that the recommendations you give end up being a little less focused than they could be, because you're focusing on the broader trend rather than the specific and meaningful trend. Okay, so this is a case of one small oversight kind of compounds and becomes more of a problem in other areas, but it's not a series of mistakes. It's one slightly different approach that you need to adopt, and then everything falls into place. So I'm really looking forward to reading your next assignment to see how you implement that advice. But thanks very much for learning this. Work went into this. It's very well written, and it's very well formatted and very clear. So thank you very much, Toyosi. Let's move on now to Sylvia's text. We have then about 4 more. Let's have a quick look in YouTube. Got some comments from Tiger. Yeah, this is good stuff. Streaming platforms rather than programs. I see. Click on the comment in StreamYard. So if I go back into StreamYard, I'm a bit of an amateur on this whole. There you are, StreamYard. I see. There we go. So I can actually click on. Oh, that's good, isn't it? So I can click on the comment and make it appear. Yeah, using tables and emails. There's a controversial suggestion here from Chris from Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions. Should you put tables in emails? My concern is that their email client might not format it right, and it might be like one of those emails when you scroll down and it's wider than the width of your computer, and then you're having to like scroll sideways to read it or something like that. But it would certainly be a good overview of the pros and cons to tabulate them. Interesting suggestion there from Chris. Maybe he should fly over to Germany and join my English lessons. But his English is, it must be said, fairly good. All right, so Sylvia's text is next. Now, my first impressions on looking at Sylvia's text are there's a lot of different formatting happening here. We have bullet points, bold. We also have what's it called? Italics. We have underlinings, and we have these little arrow things here, and then we have italics underlined again here. So we have to be careful about using so many different formatting techniques that it kind of is a bit scary for the reader when they are confronted with all the different formattings. I would say either use underlining or use bold or use italics, or maybe two of those things, but using all three might be too much. But this is just worth thinking about. The other slight concern I have, Sylvia, is I don't see paragraphs. But again, it doesn't necessarily matter. English teachers are somewhat addicted to paragraphs. We like to see paragraphs. But the modern form of writing emails is moving more and more away from paragraphs. So this is certainly a debate. It's not cut and dry. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the first, not the first paragraph, but the first section of the email here. Okay, so the key trends are here. Obviously, rental is going down. This is increasing, but as we know, BitTorrent and paid download are not increasing at the same rate. Again, I think that's the one we have to look at. This section is nice, though, here. A possible reason behind this, saving time, and it's so there's actually some possible reasons, I would say, for this trend rather than this could have. And what I like is that you are including some informed speculation here. So you are using hedging language possible to indicate that these are not factual reasons. This is you using some informed speculation to provide some insight. That's what analysis is. It's taking data and adding a sprinkling of your insight, like you would season a meal, and transforming that data into information. Now, these are reasonable assumptions. They're possible reasons. And then we come up with the following thoughts. Okay, so now we do arrive at the correct destination, but is this the right justification? The logic here is that we can't do anything against fighting piracy. Governments, it's their job. Hopefully they're doing it, but we can do paid downloads. Now, this is not wrong. This is not wrong. I think you could make it even more persuasive by saying, moreover, look at the increase in numbers with iTunes. So not only are we, I mean, we have limited options with internet piracy, but who cares? Because that's not where the big growth is. So if you added that ingredient to your analysis, it would make it even more persuasive. Okay, so now we get underlined and italics. Okay, interesting. So Sylvia is saying, go it alone. Go for the download service, but don't partner up with Blockbuster. Use it as a competitive advantage against them. It's a more aggressive strategy. The question is, will it work? If it works, then it's brilliant, because not only do we get to win, we actually beat out our competitors rather than having to join with them and share the profits with them. I think it is good that Sylvia acknowledges the problems with this, the fact it can be very expensive, but it could save our company's income. If you like the idea. Okay, so what do we think, guys? What do we think about the way this is laid out there? For the fact that I'm an English teacher and I'm so into paragraphs, I find this very easy to read, actually. And there is a kind of energy and like a kind of a flow to each very short paragraph flowing into the next one. So I can't really criticize it, because I think, as ever, the reader in this situation would get the right result. You would achieve the purpose, notwithstanding this element of the argumentation that wasn't there, the preference for iTunes. I think it's a personal choice. I think that this will be my conclusion. If Sylvia had included the additional information about the relative growth of iTunes versus BitTorrent, she would have needed to use a paragraph, because the reasoning and the complexity of the argument would have been that much greater that rendering it in these single sentence paragraphs would have made it harder to understand, I suspect. So that's going to be my final point. Depending on the complexity of your argumentation, you don't have to use paragraphs, but as your argumentation gets more complex, there are more factors coming into play. It's just easier to bring those things all into connection with each other within the context of properly structured paragraphs. We've seen it in some of these earlier examples here. So I'm still pro paragraphing, but I think that this is a pretty successful text from Sylvia. It actually also covers a lot of ground in under 300 words. So not bad at all, and an interesting, nice sort of fresh, energetic kind of response. I think that the boss would appreciate it. Sylvia, thanks very much for submitting that. I should say at this point, my students are very brave, submitting all this work and allowing it to be, commented on in public. It's really great, not just for the students involved, but also for the rest of you who can watch this and get to benefit from their efforts. So big up to them. I say Chris is gone. Thanks for his feedback. Let me go over on YouTube and see. Still got a couple of people watching apparently, which is awesome. My students, feel free, if you want to make comments, you can do. That's all good. Let's continue then with Sandy's submission. After Sandy, we have Alisa, and then we have Pinhua. Then we're done with the live stream. As you can see, we got some solid text still to look at here. First things first, first impressions. I see paragraphs, which, as we've just discussed, make me happy. And straight away, I see things like the two main ideas. So I'm getting a sense of clear structure here. And to be honest, if I just look at this email, I'm just looking at the underlined bits, and I kind of minimal expand. Okay, so in that like 7 seconds that I just looked at it, I already get a pretty strong gist of what this email is going to be about. And that's the beauty of this formatting technique. You're allowing your reader multiple levels of access into your text. You're allowing the reader to take a quick glance and get something out of it. Have a 1 minute read, get more out of it, and then maybe sit down and read it carefully and then get even more out of it. So you're writing with your reader's interests in mind. Some people say, no, my writing is so important, you have to sit down, turn your phone off and read it. Well, no, that's not how the world works. Okay, thank you for your email. Capital letter. So far, everyone's had a capital letter. You guys are legendary. All right. So this is interesting. Straight up, Sandy says, regarding game rental, I don't think we need a new strategy since our sales have stayed steady. So she just takes that out of the picture, which I kind of agree with. And then we get two main ideas: at-home cinema, so this is basically streaming, and DVD, movie, and snacks delivery. Snacks. Yes, I want snacks. All right, let's see. So we don't need emphasize on, just emphasize is okay. No preposition required. Let's take a look at the reasoning in these paragraphs. Okay, so we got a nice build up of the argumentation here. I think that we could probably make this one paragraph, to be honest, but it's all about basically how people consume movies, and then this is the ultimate conclusion. We could even include that. I mean, I just have one paragraph like this, although I would say that would be an option. Turnover is not a countable noun. So you say less turnover rather than fewer turnovers. And we don't need the comma here. Comma rules in English are not very consistent, but basically, if in doubt, don't include a comma. You use way more commas in German than you do in English. Otherwise, this is well argued and well written. My phone is talking to me for no reason. I'm not talking to you, Siri. Okay. We are losing our customers because they simply do not leave their need to leave their houses to watch a movie. Exactly. That is the problem. So what are the suggestions? Let's take a look at these paragraphs. Indicates that the paradigm shift I mentioned at the top of the stream. Keep wanting to combine your paragraphs, Andy. I hope you don't mind. Right. So I think that the argument here is very strong. We need to start using this new technology to our own benefit, for our own benefit, create a new system. I think we probably don't need this sentence because we've already established that here. And we don't want to repeat ourselves because it's all about efficiency of communication in analysis. I would combine this with this by doing this. We could then shorten this a little bit. And this sentence I'd move a bit later. Put the sentence in here. Okay. So this would be my way of trying to shorten this a little bit and create fewer but slightly longer paragraphs. Be careful of become. We're talking bekommen, right, in German. We need to say get or win or convert, something like that. I think that the question is, how much detail do we want to include here? There's an argument for saying that in this email, when it is not at all clear that VideoPlanet will take this route, already suggesting the subscription structure for free movies, maybe that's not necessary yet. Maybe you could just say something like, I've already worked out some details of this plan, which I'm happy to share with you, at the right time. Because I think that you're compelling the reader to now go through this stuff, and it might be a little bit, in German, voreilig. It might be a little bit too early for this stuff. And the risk is that you're making the email longer than it needs to be and compromising the efficiency of the core communication, of the core analysis, by offering additional information. So be careful about that. Okay, then we get the snacks delivery, which I like. Okay, so I think here you have focused in on the key trend, but what we could do with is acknowledgement of the problem of this plan, or the challenge of this plan. The whole point is that setting up a download website is very difficult, and VideoPlanet probably can't do it alone, as the person in the company says. Therefore, you need to either explain how you're going to do it, or what measures are going to avoid these problems, or you need to propose, for example, a collaboration with Blockbuster. And it would be better to spend these extra words explaining that than detailing the details of what this new service will be, given that it's going to be so challenging to actually set the service up. So I think here that we need to shift the focus slightly away from the details of the new service to the practicalities of creating the service in the first place, and making sure we acknowledge the perspectives in the company. If there's somebody in the company comments saying things like, we cannot do this alone, then we need to acknowledge that reality in our email. Otherwise, the reader, the boss, he is going to know that certain people in the company are skeptical about this. And if you don't mention it, he's going to assume that you don't realize, and that is going to badly compromise your ability to propose this idea. So always bear in mind, even if you don't agree with things being said in the company, you've got to acknowledge that there might be some weight behind them and come up with a strategy that would mitigate whatever complaints there were there. Overall, though, tone is great, paragraphing is great, and the levels of accessibility afforded by your formatting are great. Thanks very much, Sandy. Appreciate you uploading that. We've got 2 more texts to read, guys, and then the live stream will end. We've been going for a solid hour now, over an hour actually, but that's okay. That's okay. If we have comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Still one person watching. Thank you, whoever you are. Much appreciated. Although for everybody else, let's not forget, this is primarily there for you for the rest of the semester. So all this stuff will be online. You'll be able to look at it also as you're preparing for your exam towards the end of the semester. Let's take a look at Lisa's text. As always, what are the first impressions? Capital letter. I'm seeing, firstly, I'm seeing what can we do? Rhetorical question. Instantly, I'm getting a sense of what the options are. Okay, overall, as a reader, I'm being referred to as Mr. Martin. Probably go first names on this, I think. So his name is Alex Martin, right? He says, hi, Sally, good news. Best wishes, Alex. In that case, I think we can probably just say, hi, Alex. We don't have this obsession with surnames that we do in German and English. People are generally quite open with their first name, as I am. So, and it's always a bit dangerous if you go too formal. In German, going too formal is generally not a problem, right? It's rather that than going too relaxed. In English, if you go too formal, people might construe that as you having some kind of problem with them or disagreement with them. So always look for the style that the person's written to you. In this case, he said, hi, Sally, so we can return with, hi, Alex. Great intro. Crucial issues, nice vocab. Need immediate attention. Didn't repeat action, put attention. I like it. Connective. Okay. The intro establishes trust, acknowledges reader's position, employs some nice vocabulary, sets up a roadmap for the email. What is not to like? First, I'd like to provide you. You is always just with a regular small y. In German again, Z, polite, capital S, not in English. Right. Oh. Oh, our main problem is a significant rise in internet piracy. Is it though? Let's read. What's the justification for this? Yeah, the survey does show a clear increased number of pirate downloads. But yeah, this, yes, whose user base has tripled. So, Alisa, do you see that the content of what you're writing is absolutely accurate, but the form you have chosen, you've chosen to start with this one and then put this one in. That, to me, is the wrong way around. And the content is not being supported by the form. It's being slightly contradicted by the form. It's not a problem if you have a very diligent reader who reads the email carefully. But what if you don't? What if he just sort of goes over the first paragraph and thinks, okay, I've got that one. I'll jump down to this next section, and then never sees this? Again, the reader should read the whole damn email, but what if they don't? So I think that here, I know why you've put this, because this was the red herring I included. But we need to always think, okay, hang on a minute. If I find myself writing this, user base tripled over the past year, I need to restructure. I need to say, okay, we have two problems here on the internet. One is legal, one is illegal. The fact is the illegal thing, although it's a problem, that's not the main problem. So let's jump straight to the legal one, the instant paying downloads from iTunes, because they are the key problem here. Okay. This is all fine. This is all fine. We just format this always with like a gap. This sort of leaving one line in the middle of a paragraph, don't redo it in English, make it a new paragraph. So what can we do? Rhetorical question. Our first suggestion will be to create our own download service. Okay, acknowledging the problems with that makes it more persuasive. I agree. Yeah, merging with Blockbuster. So here we see this exactly the kind of reasoning that was slightly lacking in some of the other submissions. It's very risky and expensive, but we have an idea. What about merging with Blockbuster? Since they, yeah. Okay, an opportunity on both sides. Got the synergies in there. Definitely take into account. All right. Simply a well-argued paragraph with intelligent use of formatting to highlight the key points. I have nothing more to say. There's some nice vocab in there as well. Should you use contractions in emails? Say won't rather than will not. Well, people debate it back and forth. I say, yes, you should. Won't in an email. It's completely fine. Why would the reader find that a problem? Okay, let's continue. Okay, that concludes our thought of the matter. So other submissions have included like a backup strategy. The big one, merge with Blockbuster, but then always, what about doing snacks? What about cinema collaboration? What about moving to something else? I think if you have the time, adding like one additional backup strategy just to indicate, to not put all your eggs in one basket. Classic saying you may have heard. I think that if you have the time, and if you've written your email in an efficient way, which you have here, it's not too long, it's all very focused, then you have earned the right to maybe provide a second suggestion, just to give the reader a sense of choice. Don't give the reader like an ultimatum. Say, well, this is my idea, but we could also do this, sort of knowing they'll choose the first one. It's more of a psychological measure, really. But this is very good. This is a very good email, Alisa. I like language is essentially faultless. Great work. Thank you very much for submitting it. And we come to the headline text, the last text of the stream. So Pin was watching at the start, and if she's just been there the whole time, Oh, well, loving the live stream so far. Thank you very much. We finally get to your text, Pinwheel. That's kind of, that was not deliberate, that the one student watching would have their text right at the end and have to watch the whole damn thing. Well, I'm sorry, my apologies. My apologies for that. But let's take a look at your text. And I should definitely give it a careful reading, seeing as you've been watching so far. So we got a couple of minor sort of spelling things here. This is just because this is in American English, right? This is why analyzed in British English is with an S, and it's with a Z, as Americans would say, or a Z, as I would say. I'll put it in British English just because it's formatted British, but American is fine. Just try and be consistent throughout. This is also American, revitalize. You would do this with an S in English, but you can see some words, British spelling also accepts the Z. So I think before long, it will be Z's or Z's all round. Okay, first impressions. I'm seeing paragraphs. I'm seeing some bullet points here and some interesting formatting. Yeah, this is looking pretty good so far. I am more than relieved to hear about the great news! Exclamation mark. I think this is fine. More than relieved, not just relieved, but more than relieved. Yeah, why not? There's a sense of urgency here. And then you say, I agree with you that there's an imperative need. Okay, there's a, I would say, urgent need, or there is just an imperative. Imperative is not an adjective, it's a noun. So you can say there is an imperative to reevaluate, to revitalize the rentals. Yeah. I think that simply addressing the reader directly with the pronoun you and saying, I agree with you. These are words and time well spent to create trust and a sense of joint purpose with your reader. It's not going to take them very long to read that. You're not asking a lot of their time. The benefits of establishing a connection with them outweigh the costs of making your email that tiny bit longer in this context, in my opinion, when it comes down to fulfilling your purpose. So, and we have a roadmap set up for the email. Great stuff. DVD rental. One utmost alarming issue. Utmost is probably a little bit too... Okay, number one, you can't have one utmost. You can only have the utmost. There's only one because it's the pinnacle. I would say extremely. An extremely alarming issue. Although, to be honest, alarming is pretty strong anyway. There's an argument saying one alarming issue is enough. We don't want to completely freak out our reader. We confront is the observe. Yeah. We are losing loyal customers at unprecedented rates. Loyal customers, unprecedented. Great vocab. Seems to be the determinant here. This is good stuff. Okay, so I think the strength here is just pushing the boat out, going for some more ambitious vocab, just makes the email more dynamic and more pleasant to read. I think in terms of content, although all the key points are there, and you've acknowledged piracy. Yeah, you've said, yeah, you say it. It's paid downloads from iTunes that are the determinant, not so much the piracy thing, although people in the company seem to believe it is. Good point. So what we have here is a group of 3 adjectives. Using 3 adjectives to really ram home a point: alert, flexible, agile. It's quite rhetorically rich. I would normally say in an analytical email, you should keep it more neutral, but you've acknowledged that this is kind of an urgent situation, so I think it's not taking things too far. This could be the turning point in not the faith, I would say the future of our company. If we're going to have 1 and 2, I would then format them like this. Maybe you did this, but it didn't copy it right. Just so we get the visual formatting. Saves money, yes. Judging the speed. Business map, more great vocab. Okay. We would be more competitive if we merged. What you have there is a conditional to sentence. You would say, we will be more competitive if we merge without a D, or we would be more competitive if we merged with the D. Conditional 1 is will plus the infinitive, and conditional 2 is would plus the ed form. I think here, the conditional 2, which is what you've gone for, is the appropriate one. Conditional 2 is for more theoretical things. We haven't done it, but we could do it. And conditional 1 is for more realistic things. We can do it, and maybe we will do it. We haven't done it, but we totally can if you want. So conditional 1 is more likely to happen. This remains a speculative theoretical idea rather than a practical one. Yeah. Okay. Good to mention the illegal downloads. Our legal team, yeah, why not? Because as is clear from a number of emails we've seen here, it's not really the company's role to figure this stuff out. It's the government's role. But we're going to sort of monitor it and make sure it's okay. Right then, game rental. Game rental is a more manageable issue. I agree, and I think this is a justification for putting game rental second, because it's just less important. Still room for improvement, still space. Okay. Space for improvement, room for improvement is the classic idiom there. Space for improvement would be understood, but let's go for the classic collocation of room for improvement. So this is, yeah, this is really good. I mean, what it's nice is to acknowledge game rental isn't the main thing, but it does flow into your strategy. And game rental could be leveraged to get Blockbuster on board, and it would appeal to a broader customer base, which you would establish if you take on, or if you get access to Blockbuster's customers. Okay, so we get like a nice, nice, polite and positive close to the email. Overall, that is really great. This is really great. It's well formatted and it's well structured. We've got very nice use of advanced vocab, which brings life and color to the text. And the content is on point. You haven't quoted the exact numbers, but we have, we have the key trend has been noted here. If I wanted to be picky, maybe I could say that you could address the fact that people in the company see this differently, that in your opinion, some people in the company are misguided and the boss should be careful of paying too much attention to their opinions, that kind of thing. But really, this covers all the bases. How many words have you done here? It felt pretty focused as well. So we're talking 440 words. And I think you covered a lot of ground in that. In my view, somewhere between 400 and 500, around 450 words seems to be the optimum length for this particular situation. Some people have written longer emails. I've had emails with 800 words and stuff like that. It's good, but maybe not necessary. This seems to be the sweet spot that you're in here. Right, folks. There we have it. We've reached the last text. A solid hour and 20 minutes of feedback. Everybody that submitted a text here can be confident that their text to a great degree fulfilled the purpose of the task, right? We have to imagine the boss got your email. What did he think? Did he feel reassured? Did he have a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose, a sense of maybe confirmation that he's on the right track? I think yes, he would from every single one of those emails. We saw a wide range of different techniques. We saw that there's not one way to write an email. So anybody that gives you English for email writing that's rubbish. Every email is different, and even the same scenario can be completely fulfilled, or the same challenge can be fulfilled a number of different ways, a number of different emails, and that's what we see from this. Finally, really thank you very much for submitting the text and being prepared for me to comment on them. I hope you feel I was fair in my comments. Of course, this video will stay on YouTube and you can watch it, and I'll post it to our Moodle platform. You can put comments in it later, which I can address. We can also discuss it in our classes, which we'll begin having next week again. So thank you very much for everyone for being involved. Thank you for those people that watched live, and I will see you all in our next lesson. Take care and Bis dann.